Welcome to the Ground Pwned podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. We have a big pay-per-view this weekend, and I suddenly have some major games that I can talk about. But first, Scott, I completely and 100% ignored the UFC Fight Night this weekend. So tell me, what was your biggest takeaway before we head into talking about UFC 281?
Well, I don't know what you were doing, but I can at least understand why this would be the one you might kind of skip, just because it really wasn't the most appealing one on paper in terms of fight card, even top to bottom realistically. So I get it. There's a big fight next week.
I had a birthday party.
But my goodness, sir, this was a fun card. This was a fun card. We had 9 finishes out of 11 fights.
Let me bring up the Tapology here for this event.
It was really just like I don't want to call it a bloodbath, because it really wasn't like there. I don't think there was that many kind of knockout brawl kind of things. There wasn't a lot of blood, but there was some quick finishes, striking, both striking and grappling, I should say. It really was just like a fun kind of breezy event. Although the thing that you will benefit from, because I hope you do actually go back and watch this, because it'll only take you maybe an hour to watch most of it, is the fact that when you're watching these live, you know how it is. They throw in a bunch of promos. They're like, oh, we don't have any live fights for you, so we're going to do a lot of talking and stalling. So they did a lot of that. That's the downside, obviously, of an event like this. But it was a lot of fun. Even the main event was, I think, a lot more engaged after a terrible first round, I should say. But it was a lot more engaging from that point on before there was a finish. And a surprise finish. The underdog here won in Amanda Lemos.
Yeah, I saw that finish. That was plastered all over my timeline when it happened. I was trying to keep up with things as it was happening, as I was at this birthday party that pulled me away from watching the fight night. This was, again,
that's the worst.
This was one of those of if I have nothing else going on, I'll watch it. That's the caliber of fight night this was going in. And unfortunately for this fight night, I had something else going on.
Maybe that should be one of our metrics too when we're talking about these fight nights.
Yeah, maybe. But I was, I was very surprised that if there was going to be a finish from strikes, that it was Lemos finishing Rodriguez and not the other way around.
I would say no. Actually, I would push back on that. I think if you told me someone's going to end this fight with strikes, I would pick Lemos. But if you tell me someone's going to win the decision, I was okay. I bet you Marina Rodriguez is going to find a way to get that decision, because she's not as much of a power striker, Rodriguez. But Lemos definitely is, and we saw that on display here.
Yeah, she put her lights out. Good God.
No, but you know what? This has been a topic of conversation as we record this. We're actually recording this day earlier than usual. This is Sunday, and it's been a topic of conversation. Was the stoppage too early? And there's the inevitable, because these are women. There's a lot of people who will go into are they stopping this fight early because they are women and they're treated differently than men? It's kind of a twofold conversation. I would say, for my part, having watched it now, and you did see it, right? I saw the finish. Okay, yeah. This is the only part we're talking about anyway, so you can certainly participate. But I thought, watching Marina Rodriguez, that she wasn't aware of where she was at that point. I don't think she's fighting back. Her arms are up, but she's not defending very well.
She was going off instinct.
Mm-hmm.
It was not it wasn't intelligent defense, as is the metric.
Exactly. And you're seeing, you look in the eye, a lot of the referees, they will look for where are the eyes of this fighter? Are they engaged, And if they're not really engaged, it doesn't really matter. They can stop the fight. And I've seen stoppages of similar nature for men as well. And I think one of the commentators who was there yesterday probably could attest to fights being stopped of a nature like that as well, Dominic Cruz. So,
by the way, let me just say this once for all. Dominic Cruz's loss to Henry Cejudo was 100% legitimate, and that was a good stoppage.
Yes, it was. I think it was fine.
Yeah, but he just can't let it go. No, every time Keith Peterson is refereeing and he's on commentary, there's always a little jab towards Keith Peterson.
Yeah.
I like Dominic Cruz. He was one of my early favorites. When I started getting into MMA, I loved watching Dominic Cruz.
I have so much respect for him as a fighter.
Yeah, but I also think that he just needs to let that one go. Because if you think it was an early stoppage, cool. But it's years later now, man.
there's a lot of like using the platform that he has for his own like petty things that he'll often do. He did it. What's it called when Hans Mollenkamp
Oh yeah,
last
that was
year?
a weird one too.
It was, I mean, okay, whatever, but like also it seems like they've mended fences. So like, why are you going to go up there and make like those type of accusations, and then just be like, yeah, we're cool now? That's weird. Like that's a very strange thing to do.
But Dominic
anyway.
Cruz has the most intelligent breakdowns of any commentator, I think.
I love him when he's on they used to put him on the analyst desk. They never do it anymore. But you're right. He does a lot of really good stuff when he's actually talking about, like, let's say we can review what happened in the fight, go back and talk about it. He's excellent. I love him.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in the moment where he's like, oh, well, like, when they're trying to break down a grappling exchange or like kind of get into the mind of a fighter as like a striking exchange is happening or like, they're kind of feeling each other out. Cruz is probably the best out of any of the commentators in terms of like, especially in terms of like the former fighters. Or I mean, Cruz is a current fighter, but you know what I mean.
Right. No, I mean, I get you. The
actual fight analysis.
Yeah, exactly. I think DC is capable of very like being excellent with that
when he stays focused.
But, yeah, that's the thing. He loses. He's like John Madden if John Madden like just couldn't look at the TV for very long. And John Madden was a lot of fun, right? I mean, he was a lot of fun. And sometimes he would go kind of off the beaten path a little bit. But usually it wasn't for too far, for too long in like, let's say a moment or a game that actually like mattered. Like it might later in the game, you might see more of him kind of go or hear more of him go off book and then just kind of like making it interesting, right? Because the football action may not have been as interesting anymore. DC will go into these things like first minute, first fight, championship fight. It's like, come on, just call the fight.
And also, let me say this because, I am not a Henry Cejudo fan. I thought Demetrius Johnson beat him, and I was rooting for Dominic Cruz to beat him. But, I just saying what I saw in that fight. You're
calling it down the middle. You're trying to be unbiased.
I'm not trying to be anything. I am telling you exactly how I felt about that. Like I thought that Cejudo legitimately stopped Cruz.
But that's what I said. You're trying not to be biased. You're taking that out of it, and you're just looking at it from an unbiased perspective. I understand.
Yeah, in that fight, I was a Dominic Cruz fan, and I was like, "Yep, he lost that. That was a good stoppage." But back to this fight. What did you see from like the earlier rounds before the finish here?
The first round was really boring. A lot of feeling out. There was almost nothing happening. Second round, Lemos started to land with her power a little bit more, and she got it down on the ground. She was starting to assert herself as the better fighter. So I think I'm not saying that Marina Rodriguez couldn't win another night, but most definitely the better fighter last night won and didn't just get an opportunity and like kind of finish it. So yes, you want to start making a case, hey, maybe that fight was stopped early. I still disagree with you pretty strongly, to be perfectly honest. But I think we saw the fighter who looked better win anyway. And I don't know that it was going to change much.
Let's stay on the women's side of things here. I am seeing that Polyana Viana got a KO or TKO in 47 seconds.
She sure did.
So what happened there? Like, again, I'm very, very blind to what has happened in this fight night aside from that finish. So like how did that play out?
I mean, she blitzed not from like the moment the bell rang, but she got a real good blitz on Jin Yu Fry, caught her good with a knee, I believe, to the chest, and then just a bunch of follow-up punches, and she was just like totally out of there. She kind of like was knocked out on the ground, and then the last punch before as she was getting pulled off kind of woke her up. She didn't necessarily start arguing the case or anything like that. But there was like a whole lot of like, what is happening going on with her? And then Viana runs back over and kisses her on the forehead. And you could just look on her face. She's like, what is going on? And it's a shame too, because Jin Yu Fry is, I don't know if people who watch like UFC only understand this, but Jin Yu Fry is one of the best 105 pounders in the whole world.
Yeah, she
awesome. Is not one of the best 115 pounders in the whole world. And Jillian DeCourcy, who is the Invicta 105 pound champion right now, a belt that Jin Yu Fry, I believe, used to hold, if I'm not mistaken. She was basically, because she kind of gave like a little assessment of it, saying that when Jin Yu Fry was down at 105, she was able to kind of like bully girls. She was big, like, she was big for the weight, and she was able to use that size as her advantage. She can't do that at this weight. And it takes away a lot of what makes her really good. And that's the unfortunate part. That's why I would like to see 105 pounds in the UFC.
It's kind of like how Jessica Andrade used to fight at 135 because there was no 125, and then of course she did get down to 115 eventually. But
well, she skipped 25 because there was no 25 yet.
Yeah,
but I think she's still ideally a 25er. I think that's probably her best
too.
weight, but she's obviously not going to beat Valentina Shevchenko. I think if she can get to 15. And she seems to think she can, and she has. She's making the weight and everything. If she can do that, yeah, I mean, she can. She's still capable of winning that belt back. I don't care who's the champion.
Oh yeah, Jessica Andrade is an incredible fighter.
She could beat anybody down there, anybody, including Zhang Weili, including Carlos Barza, anybody. If she gets matched up on the right night, she can win.
Let's talk about this co-main event. Neil Magny defeating Daniel Rodriguez as a submission in round 3.
This is a fun fight. This is actually a really good fight. Magny was doing really well early. Rodriguez took the momentum back in the second round, took that round, and then this was a little bit of a mix here. It wasn't looking great necessarily for Magny in round 3, but it was still kind of wide open. Then he gets it down, gets the choke in, and he gets the tap out. I mean, he kind of needed that to win the fight, and he pulled it out. So this is a really good fight, really good win for him too.
I see he got a performance of the night bonus. Magny did.
Yes, he did. He deserved it. It was a great fight. Honestly, it's kind of unfortunate this wasn't fight of the night because I thought both of them deserved it. But there were a lot of finishes here. Whenever that happens, they hand out more performance of the night, and then they usually don't hand out a fight of the night. Sometimes they'll go overboard. They'll go like 5, 6, 7. They've done that before when there have been lots of finishes. They did not do that here. They didn't open up the checkbook too deep, UFC.
Yeah, well, they have a pay-per-view to think of next week, so they gotta. And there's a lot of bangers on that card.
Got to keep 87% of the revenue.
Hell yeah,
excuse me, 83. My fault.
But I was actually surprised Grant Dawson did not get a performance of the night bonus, given the UFC.
He missed weight.
Oh, okay.
A lot of
fighters did miss weight. Yes.
So the ones that missed weight were ineligible. He was ineligible, and that is unfortunate for him because he did look really good. That was a really excellent performance for him.
And I did see his submission over Mark O. Madsen.
There's an O in the middle. It's not O Madsen like he's Irish. I had this whole thing yesterday.
Well, I heard
talked about it on our show.
I mean, some of the commentators will fall into the trap of saying, "All right, well now O Madsen's taking him down." And it's like, no, it's just Madsen.
I noticed very clearly at the beginning of the fight, or like maybe it was in the pre-fight, that Brendan Fitzgerald said Mark O. Madsen. He was saying it so clear. I'm like, this guy, he knows what people are saying. He understands. I think he's plugged in. He follows me on Twitter. I'm not saying he got it from me, but like he follows people. He's interactive on social media. So if they say it, I think he picks it up.
Yeah, but like I think that's a big win for Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson's undefeated, isn't he?
Grant Dawson, is he undefeated? I didn't think he
was.
No,
he has 1 loss and 1 no contest on his record. Or is that a draw? No, it's a draw. But is he undefeated in the UFC? Yeah, his only loss.
He's unbeaten. He does have the draw to Ricky Glenn, majority draw from a couple fights ago. That is his only blemish in the UFC, but it's not a loss. Yeah, his only
loss is a round
Kansas
1
City Fighting Alliance.
A round 1 KO to elbows 35 seconds into the first round. That's a flash.
That sounds like a just got caught kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think he's really good. He's got just tremendous size, especially for 155 pounds. I mean, he was monstrous for 45, but he couldn't make that weight. That was not fair. He missed weight here. I understand this was a short notice kind of situation. He still probably should be making that weight if he says he can, but nonetheless, he is. If he gets that straightened out, I mean, this is a guy who could make like a real run. Does he have championship upside? I don't know, but I think there's curiosity there, and that's enough.
So are there any other fights that we need to discuss before we move on from UFC Fight Night Rodriguez versus Lemos, aka 7 other names?
It would probably take a lot longer for us to name the fights than it would to actually go back and watch them. So I would say, honestly, just go back and watch a lot of these. Like, just look at Tapology, Wikipedia, SureDog, wherever you're going to look at for the bout order, and or even just go to the ESPN app. I believe there's like a little row that you can just watch all the most recent fights individually. And I would just go down and watch any fights that are a finish. So you can probably avoid Miranda Maverick versus Shayna Young. It was not like a bad fight, but it's just Maverick just kind of overwhelmed her like utterly and completely.
Yeah, Shayna I saw Young, that was a pretty one-sided fight from Twitter.
And even the other decision, Johnny Munoz over Ludwig Sholinian. And that's the first time I've ever said his last name correctly. I keep screwing that one up. So Sholinian. proud of myself.
Come on, act like you've been there before.
No. I'm gonna pat myself on the back. That's okay.
Score a touchdown. You calmly hand the ball to the ref.
But I have never been there before. This is uncharted territory to pronounce this name. And nonetheless, you can even watch that fight. I think this whole fight card is utterly watchable. I highly recommend you go during the week, sir. And I know you've got a lot on your plate, but try to fill some time here and there. Just watch like a fight here or there. Maybe you got 3 minutes. Watch Tamiris Vidal get the win over Ramona Pascual. You got more like close to 10 minutes. Watch Jake Hadley in his performance against Carlos Candelaria. I think you can go do that. I would recommend this heavily. This was a really fun card. It totally outpaced the expectations of it, both the main event and the whole fight card. So I highly recommend.
That's good to know. And I'm glad that it exceeded our expectations. I think I gave it a 2.5 going in.
Yeah, I think I had it the same way as well. But I think you might have even had the main event more. Oh no, I think I was more interested in the main event than you.
Yeah,
but nonetheless,
we'll see what it actually means for the division with that Lemos win over Rodriguez.
Honestly, like they're selling this narrative that like, oh, maybe she's going to be the late notice, the backup for the title fight that's coming up this weekend at 281. Same in women's strawweight. But realistically, there's no way that on merit you can put Amanda Lemos ahead of Jessica Andrade, because Jessica Andrade tapped her out with a standing arm triangle not that long ago.
Yeah.
And Andrade has not won. She's a former champion. She's honestly a lot more bankable. She's kind of a bigger entity, a more known entity at this point. I don't see why anybody would do that. So I'm pretty sure all they've been doing with this whole thing was to give you a reason to care about this fight for the duration of Saturday, and then you move on with your life.
Oh, yeah. The best
and
fight
then they will change their mind.
Always the next fight on the schedule.
That is true. And this next set of fights, though, it's a whopper, dude. I
Goodness
like this.
Gracious.
I love this card. This is the best card of the year. Everyone was saying that about the last one. I always disagreed. This isn't revisionist history. I really felt like 281 was always going to be the better of the two cards in terms of on paper. Obviously, we're still talking about, but this fight card is just mammoth here. 2 title fights, a really fantastic lightweight matchup, which we always love. Honestly, I'm just going to skip to spoilers here. Is the main card worth your $75? Absolutely. Yes. If anything is, it's one.
Here's what I did, because this main card is so worth my money. I rescheduled my Black Panther Wakanda Forever tickets from Saturday night, because I was like, oh crap, I forgot, like, I bought these tickets like 3 months ago, and I didn't even like look at the schedule, or 2 months ago, whenever it went on sale, I didn't even look at the schedule, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna like start bleeding into the main card with like the time that I selected, so I moved it to Sunday afternoon. So if I get spoiled, it's the UFC's fault.
Yeah.
That's all
fair.
I'm saying.
But honestly, it probably is going to be worth it, because this whole fight card is fantastic. Here's just a quick rundown of the main card here. What you're getting for your $75: Israel Adesanya against Alex Pereira, middleweight title on the line. Trilogy fight. 2 of the fights were in kickboxing. The champion here has lost to Alex Pereira both times in kickboxing. So
one of which was a pretty bad knockout.
It was, and the other one, realistically, like, Adesanya was in this fight. So that's why there's a lot of interest here. There's one guy has his number, the other guy has the belt. I think it's fascinating. They're obviously in a different arena here well, not just in Madison Square Garden, but also in a different sport. Mm-hmm. So there are some wrinkles here. I think it's fascinating. I love this fight. I think this is one of the most intriguing fights of the entire calendar year. It's definitely one of the best fights that Adesanya has been put in front of him from a promotional standpoint in quite a while.
This man, Alex Pereira, has beaten Israel Adesanya in kickboxing more times than Israel Adesanya has lost total in MMA.
That's true.
He's lost once, and that's to Jan Blachowicz. That was him attempting to go up and take a second belt. So yeah, he was the smaller man going up against the relatively large light heavyweight Jan Blachowicz.
Very, very, very big man. He's more like Blachowicz has told me he gets up to between fights. This isn't what he rehydrates to, but between fights he can get up to 250 pounds. It's a large man. That's a large man. Adesanya really is just about like more or less 200 pounds, like at his biggest.
This is one of the most intriguing matchups. I would say, like, and I know how this fight ended up going, but this is the most intriguing matchup for me of Israel Adesanya since he fought Paulo Costa.
Absolutely. This is easily the most interesting. I think all the other ones have, I don't want to say just some fights, but like it's kind of just been like, okay, next man up, let's see. And obviously there was some intrigue for people who really are big fans of Robert Whittaker, and they wanted to see, okay,
Yeah.
maybe the first fight wasn't exactly representative of the talent gap between the two, because that was a big win for Adesanya. And yes, Adesanya definitely didn't, blast Robert Whittaker that time, but I think he asserted himself as the better fighter, despite the fact people like to say, oh, maybe you could score that one for Robert Whittaker. Guys, sit down. It's okay. He didn't win.
I do love that, like, Marvin Vettori still thought he won that second fight when that was so much more one-sided than the first one.
Guys, you got to get the rose-tinted glasses that Marvin Vettori has. He has something else that you don't have access to, because he sees the world as Marvin Vettori sees the world, and only Marvin Vettori can see that world.
So what do you think is like the key to victory here? Because like, do you see either of these guys going to any kind of grapple heavy approach? Because what's going to keep this from being just a third kickboxing match between these two?
See, that's what's so fascinating is like, I could literally see either one of them mixing in grappling. It may not be the most advanced grappling that you will see out there, but I think it's probably, especially from Adesanya, because he's had more time in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine there will be a level of capability in grappling department that he can possibly display. I expect if it goes beyond 5 minutes, we will definitely see grappling at some point. It would be very surprising to me if we don't. But I don't know. I mean, there's so many ways that, put it this way. When we have two kickboxers going against each other, what do we often see? We see them go to a different realm, right?
Just like with two wrestlers.
Exactly. Having said that, I think Adesanya still wants to, just speculating here, I think he will probably still want to prove, listen, I am a better kickboxer. I won't necessarily just beat you because now we can grapple. I can beat you with my hands up here as well. But I don't know. I mean, is he going to take the path of least resistance? Is he going to, is pride going to come into play? I don't know. It's very intriguing. I think this is just so fascinating a matchup. And I try not to fawn over fights like this very often, but this one I think really is just terrific. I really do.
I remember being in Las Vegas for International Fight Week this year in this past July, and both Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya, that was the last time they each fought. Alex Pereira just completely flatlined Sean Strickland, and Israel Adesanya pulled off kind of like a boring but dominant performance over Jared Cannonier. And I remember thinking, like, that's got to be next. That's like the fight that's the one that makes Israel Adesanya's fights exciting again, is seeing that this man who has beaten him twice before, granted one of them was a very close fight in kickboxing,
sure,
him coming into this new sport after Israel Adesanya came to this sport and became a star and a dominant champion, and now the guy who has beaten him twice is here, and that writes itself. But then also you have the fact that these are just two extremely high level fighters who both often bring an exciting style. And, Israel Adesanya, the times that he has been unexciting, we'll say, has been when he has an opponent that doesn't bring the fight to him. And I think that Pereira is going to bring the fight to him, which is going to make this a very exciting style.
Absolutely. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is like some sort of guaranteed banger. We could be in for weirdness. Like when I say I don't know necessarily what's going to happen, I really don't know if we're going to get a fantastic fight or like some sort of, what did we just kind of watch kind of thing. But I'm just too intrigued by it because it could go. I like fights where I don't necessarily know what will happen, like in any meaningful way at all. Like obviously we don't know. Like we think we know and we don't. This one, no one knows. It's going to be just a fascinating mix of styles here. And I like that.
We never want to guarantee that a fight is going to be a banger, because I think one of the few times I have guaranteed a fight is going to be a banger to people like at a table at like a bar that I was at, it was Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, there's no way this fight, it's probably not even going to make it out of the first round because these guys both hit so hard.
I do not want to say that it was your fault that it happened, because I don't think you have that type of power in the universe, but I imagine you're not alone. I bet you there were a lot of people who did the same thing. And I think
John Anik said it.
Collectively, you all kind of used your energy in the worst possible way and angered the fight gods. They just got annoyed with you. I don't know why. You didn't deserve it. You definitely didn't deserve it, but that's what happened.
I think even John Anik in like the lead up to that fight was like, I doubt we have 3 rounds of this, but I doubt we'll need them.
Yeah, well, I mean,
well,
it's part of his job is to say that sometimes,
of
right?
course.
That's okay.
But this isn't the only title fight on this card, Scott.
It isn't. And the other one being, of course, Carla Esparza defending the women's strawweight belt. We were just talking about the division here with Lemos getting the win in the same weight class, defending against Zhang Wei Li, who is absolutely a qualified challenger. I think it would be reasonable if somehow Jessica Andrade was able to have skipped the line, but I think there's a lot of UFC effort to try hard to keep Zhang Wei Li in the championship picture. I think she is a key element to their strategy in Asia to keep a champion from Asia, specifically China here in this case. So she's going to get all the chances in the world. Not that she doesn't deserve them, because she is coming off just a destructive retiring of Joanna Jędrzejczyk victory back in June. So there's merit here. It's just, for me, I would have preferred it to go to Andrade, but I'm totally okay with this. And honestly, this one I think is actually going to be a really fun fight, and I don't know how long it's going to go.
Yeah, and I think that Zhang Wei Li is rightfully so a very big favorite, right?
I believe she's a big favorite. I haven't looked at I don't always look at the odds until we get closer anyway, but yeah, there's a perception out there that Carla Esparza maybe isn't the strongest champion, right? I think that there's no secret that that's how a lot of people interpret her, right? Like, they look at that fight over Rose Namajunas. They're not impressed with her performance, and honestly, nobody was impressed with her performance. But I think people were probably even less impressed with Rose Namajunas' performance in that fight, if it was possible, because that really was that's the worst fight. By the way, the UFC put that fight for free
I saw that
on their YouTube, and I'm thinking to myself, did Scott Coker hack it or something like that? Did Bellator do some sort of way that's like, hey, why don't we make it look like they're trying to promote one of their worst fights of all time? Surely that's not a decision they would have made internally.
I looked at how many views it had, and I was like, there's 21,000 views. Like, shortly after it went up, I was like, 21,000 people went there to view the comments.
Yeah, that's a good call. I like that.
So I'm looking at the odds here, and Zhang Wei Li is as high as a minus 445 favorite, and I mean, these are across several books, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then Carla Esparza is as high as a plus 300 underdog.
Yeah. I mean, that's just one. You do one, then it goes the other way, right? That does tell you a lot. I can't remember the last time a champion was this much of an underdog. Maybe Matt Serra. I don't know. I'm trying to think. But yeah,
was Bisping a pretty big underdog to GSP?
He was probably an underdog, but I bet you it wasn't by that much. I bet you didn't cross into the 445, 450 range or whatever it was for.
Maybe when Valentina was coming for Nico Montano in that fight that never happened.
That is possible as well. That obviously didn't happen, but you're right. That's actually a good callback. I wonder if that would have been more so. But nonetheless, there is a perception out there that this is Zhang Wei Li's belt to win. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to see if Esparza is not going to be expected to win on the feet here. I think her realm is if she gets it down and is able to work some grappling, maybe kind of take some rounds that way, maybe mix in some strikes, even get to a finish on the mat in the grappling realm or something like that. Because we could certainly see Esparza has been doing this a long time. All right, there's no reason to think she couldn't find an advantage there on the mat if she gets it into her realm. But short of that, yeah, I mean, it definitely looks like it favors Zhang Wei Li, but we'll see. I think this is why I don't think this fight is actually going to go 5 rounds. I think someone's going to get the finish.
And I think that person is going to probably be Zhang Wei Li if I had to guess.
Yeah, if you want to make a guess, that's fine. I'm abstaining from predictions myself, but look, I get it. I see all the optics. I can understand why it would look that way. So we'll see.
I mean, I'll give you a prediction for every single one of these fights if you want. I don't even care.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't care. You do what you want. That's fine. I'm covering the fights, so I'm not gonna go over there and be like, yeah, I think Carla Esparza is gonna get blitzed, and then a few days later be like, hey, Carla, how's it going? So how do you think you're gonna win the fight?
I get that.
It's disingenuous. I can't do that.
So I'm picking Izzy, Zhang, Poirier.
Dustin Poirier against Michael Chandler, yeah.
Yes. Frankie Edgar.
You think he's going to beat
maybe that's
Chris
too
Gutierrez?
Much with my heart. Maybe that's too much with my heart.
I think that's a heart pick. Not to say Frankie couldn't win, but Chris Gutierrez hits hard, especially the kicks.
And then as much as it pains me, I think I'm going to pick Claudio Puelles over Dan Hooker.
Okay.
Even though I like Dan Hooker a lot, but Claudio Puelles is a really freaking good fighter.
But what you've just done is you outlined the 5 fights of the main card. And honestly, I don't know if everybody is familiar with every single name on here. Not every single name on here is a name you should know about or you would know about. But I think what we have here is an absolutely loaded main card for a pay-per-view in 2022 UFC. This is what I want. I want a couple championship fights. I want like a high level, elite level, especially from an entertainment standpoint, non-title fight. And then 2 other fights that either are going to be fascinating or entertaining. And I think we have that here in everything. I think we've completed more or less the checklist.
And let me tell you something else.
Okay.
Remove those 5 cards from this fight card, right?
Okay, just lop off the top. Okay.
Look at the prelims alone. That is a very strong UFC fight night in 2022.
Yeah, so I'm just going to shout for you the 4 main prelim fights, because they separate them to the early prelims and which is stupid, by the way. It's a really dumb.
They're all
concept,
prelims.
They do it anyway. It's just like one more reason you have to change the channel in the app. But nonetheless, we're the featured prelim. Brad Riddell against Renato Moicano, which, hey,
banger.
Maybe there's less star power, but this absolutely certified banger, 100%. You are spot on. Dominic Reyes against Ryan Spann. This has like the makings, this fight, of a UFC fight night main event.
I was just thinking that.
And I don't mean that necessarily. It almost sounds like a backhand compliment in some ways, but like both of these guys have headlined fight nights. And Dominic Reyes, say what you want like about what's happened since this fight, but like I think he beat John Jones. I think it's close enough that it could go the other way, but I think he beat John Jones in John Jones' last appearance. So by all rights, you could look at him as the guy who was actually the number 1 light heavyweight in the world at the time Jan Blachowicz beat him. So this is someone who's accomplished things in recent memory. And
he's lost.
I should say it. He didn't actually accomplish it. I do need to preface that. He didn't actually accomplish the feat of getting the win, but I think he put a good foot out there, and really it would have been fair to give him the win.
And people are like, oh, he had one shot at it. Now he's kind of a has-been. Look at his last 3 fights. They're to 3 of the last 4 UFC light heavyweight champions.
Yeah, he's fighting killers. You know
he's
what?
He's lost to John Jones, Jan Blachowicz, and Yuri Prohashka. All of
fight
which
of the year
are
against
amazing.
Prohashka. That was an amazing fight.
Oh my god, I love that fight.
Fight of the year level. That was absolutely a banger. But yeah, so that's on there. Molly McCann against Erin Blanchfield. What we have here are absolutely one of the most interesting women's talents that they have in terms of personalities, especially on the UFC roster. And Molly McCann going against one of the top prospects in all of MMA, I think, in Erin Blanchfield, who is local, by the way. I probably say this every time, but she went to high school in my town.
You have said that, yeah.
Yeah.
Andre Petrosky is looking pretty good lately. I think that he
against Wellington Herman. That's also a nice.
A good
this
fight.
Is a whole like this. If this was your UFC Fight Night main card, I think people would watch that and be like, you know what? This might be a better main card than the main card that we had on paper before just the other day.
And like you have names on even the early prelims. You have Karolina Kowalkiewicz. You have
absolutely former title challenger
Julio Arce. You have Carlos Ulberg, who the UFC has put some promotional weight behind.
Negomariano Nikolai, or is it Nikolai Negomariano? They always announce it in a weird way.
Yeah.
For when they do his name, I'm not sure if it's the surname or the first name or the given name that goes first. I don't know, but that's fascinating. There's some local talent on here, which they like to do, of course. Who they are, say, like you mentioned, Matt Frivola. They're both local guys. Adzaitar is fighting against Frivola. That's fine. Silvana Gomez Juarez against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I like this fight. Mike Trezano is also his Jersey guy.
It's an Ultimate Fighter winner, right?
Troy. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And RC's fighting Montel Jordan. I like him at 135 pounds as well. Honestly, there's not a weak link on this fight card. On my other podcast, my buddy who I host with, Dan Urban, is not a fan of Carlos Esparza. He calls this the weak link, but otherwise, I think it's a fantastic card.
When does this card actually start? I have a charity live stream, and I'm like, I hope my charity live stream ends before this prelim start, which I don't think it will.
Prelims? Honestly. Okay, let me see if I can do some math here. It's 8, 7, 6. It could be more like a 4:30 Central Time for you.
Okay. I'll
Start
probably
time
miss
for
the first
prelim
couple of
fights.
fights, which is a bummer,
Yeah, there
but
you
I'll
go.
be there
But that's
for the
okay.
main prelims.
Yeah, and
But
obviously you'll be good for the 9 p.m. Central.
oh,
start
absolutely.
time
I mean, that's why
of the main card.
that's why I swapped around my Black Panther tickets to be Sunday instead of
There
Saturday.
you go.
But
Absolutely.
before we move on from this card, so we've kind of run down the whole card. We talked about the top two fights. I think we need to give a little bit of service to Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler here, because Michael Chandler versus Justin Gaethje, fight of the year. And I think this has that same potential. I think that these are, again, two action fighters at the top of the lightweight division, and they also bring it. Like they will go forward and into each other and just crash until one of them falls or the bell rings or the horn blows.
And just like that fight last year between Gaethje and Chandler, I mean, there's high stakes here. Either one of these guys could end up with the next title shot at 155 pounds. Maybe they'll go the direction of Alexander Volkanovski. That may happen, but if it doesn't, either one of these guys, if they win the fight, would be one, a fresh challenger for Islam Makhachev, and two, a very qualified one. I think they would, like, the UFC is itching to put Michael Chandler in there and have him win a belt. They would love to parade him around Fox News, wouldn't they?
They really would, yes.
But this would be. I love the stakes here. I love that this is an interesting fight. This is like the confluence of everything that you want from a modern UFC fight that doesn't have a title on the line. It really is like the epitome of everything. I love this fight. I love it, love it, love it.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I think that this is probably outside of the main event, this is the fight I'm most looking forward to out of the entire card.
What about what's your favorite fight that's not on the pay-per-view? Which of the, because we named all the prelim fights, which is your favorite that you can watch without paying $75?
I'm split between two, and it's, I think, the two most obvious ones, which is Moicano Riddell and Reyes Span.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can understand why we would say that too. You know what? I'm going to go with a dark horse here, because I mean, I could probably pick one of those two, but I'm going to give you a dark horse.
Okay.
Julio Arce and Montel Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't know if I said Montel Jordan before, and if I did, that's a big slip up, but this is how we do it, so sometimes you just make mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, this is just unbelievable prelims leading into just a stellar stacked pay-per-view. I can't wait for 281.
I love it. And I mean, are these are must-watch prelims, right? Did we already fawn over them enough, or are we even going to find better prelim cards out there? Like this seems like peak.
Yeah, you're right, I think, in saying that this is on paper the best card of the year.
Mm-hmm. That's where I'm at, man. And even if we lose a couple of these fights, which, hey,
Don't.
knock wood, right? No, knock wood, knock wood. But let's face it does happen. We lost a few last week. So there was like a something with the scale going on or something like that. I think the CME crew was speculating it was a Halloween candy messing them up, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, something was happening with the weight last week, and everybody was missing. Hopefully we don't have that. Hopefully everybody's healthy. We don't lose anybody to potential heart issues like we lost one of the heavyweight fights. Yeah.
Josh Parisian
was supposed to fight Chase Sherman. That did not happen. That was
unfortunate.
Also,
there was a Chase Sherman quote that kind of caught my eyes. Was he talking about Hunter Campbell? Or was it
I
Mick
don't know
Maynard?
what you're talking about. You're going to have to...
In one of the media day interviews, I forget if it was one of the matchmakers, either Hunter Campbell or Mick Maynard, they were, I guess he saw them at like a party or a bar or something like that. And he came up to Chase and was like, "Hey man, you got to save your money. You got to put some money aside. Don't spend it all right now." And he was like, "But I see him over there. He's got 3 women in the booth and he's getting bottle service for everyone." He's like, "Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about, man. Like, you're spending all your money." And it's like, I think there's a little bit of a pay disparity there between the UFC matchmakers and Chase Sherman.
Well, that's number one. The number two there's a point where Chase Sherman is not going to be able to physically do his job anymore. He'll have to move on to something else. Hunter Campbell could wind up in a wheelchair. He can still do his job and make that money.
I'm going to look up which one it was.
And I don't mean to be ableist. I'm just trying to make a point here that physically it doesn't matter if his body is able to hold up. He can still work in the role that he has. If Chase Sherman breaks his leg tomorrow and he doesn't walk right anymore, he's probably never fighting again.
Yeah, that's the thing is like, God, I'm trying to think of which one it was, but anyway, he was like, "Yeah, I bought my designer sunglasses, and I'm like, I'm just gonna live my best life." And it's like, I don't know, man. I think there's a false equivalency going on here.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on in the UFC.
But yeah,
it's almost its own conversation. But we don't have time for that because we have so much gaming stuff to talk about.
Yeah, man.
We have obviously this is a monster, fight coming up, but there's so much gaming going on. And to be perfectly honest, and we'll talk about this in a moment, but I'm way more excited about the big gaming event of the week than I am about the fights. I can't even lie. And you know how excited I am about these fights. I went out there and put my heart on the line here saying how much I'm really interested in this fight card and how I love it, but I'm way more interested in the other thing. But before we do that, I just want to share with you some of the games that I've been playing this week. I've kind of had I don't want to go deep into it because you've got some more interesting thoughts than I do and some more interesting topics. But I dipped back in the catalog. I was playing Def Jam Vendetta recently. I played Def Jam Fight for New York a little bit. And this is a way better game, first off, than Def Jam Vendetta. I don't care what anybody says.
Oh, Fight for New York rules.
If because there's people I'll talk to. You know who actually prefers Def Jam Vendetta? Israel Adesanya.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think he's wrong here. Def Jam Fight for New York is the better game. Way better game. Way better. It changes up the game a little bit because Vendetta is a wrestler, and this is more like a hybrid wrestling MMA. I think it's like proto MMA in terms of and granted, UFC is happening at this point. I believe around the time this came out was when George St. Pierre lost to Matt Hughes the first time. So it was like UFC 50. Roughly around the time this came out. My created character in the story mode, I named him GSP, and I tried to make him sort of look like GSP. So that's where I'm going for. That's the vibe I'm going for. I created a format, like a fight style that has martial arts, wrestling, and not wrestling, submissions and kickboxing.
I mean, it's not hard to make a character look like GSP.
No, he's pretty.
He's just
pretty blank
bald
slate,
guy.
Creative fighter. Yeah. It kind of is. It's like it's not like you would look at him and be like, "That's GSP," but you look at him and be like, "You know what? I could see how with the constraints of what you had, this is pretty good. This is solid."
I remember the create a character functionality in that game was serviceable, not amazing.
It's I like the way you do it. It's like a perp sketch, right? It's like, well, what does his eyes look like? What is his hair? What is his skin color?
Oh, that's right.
They do it like that. But on the whole, you cannot you can pick one of 8 faces or face shapes and things. It's not enough, but it was serviceable. Anyway, I'm having fun with that. I finished the NBA 2K23 Michael Jordan mode where you play all the 15 games. I had a lot of fun playing that. I think if you have access to NBA 2K23 and you're very tired of the microtransactions being ever present and everything, just play that mode. Play it through. It'll last you. It's 15. It's 14 games and then one scenario where you can beat the Cavs, or again, like I said last time, if you're a Cleveland fan, you can just continue to lose to your heart's content. WWE 2K Playgrounds I'm playing, and this game does not live up to the other arcade style games, but I'm kind of a sucker for arcade style sports games, so I'm still playing it. And I have one level to go in Super Mario 3D World, my friend. I'm at the final castle.
So that you haven't reached the post game yet, then.
Oh my goodness, there's post game?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
So you got a lot to go.
Oh my goodness, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's like a final castle, and then you have maybe either 1 or 2 more worlds.
Wow. Oh, that's exciting.
This is where it gets real. This is where the challenge gets real.
Oh, nice. So I love it. I'm
ready
excited.
Yourself.
I'm very excited for that. Thank you, man. That's really great. What about you though? You are playing so much more interesting and on the pulse stuff than I am. What's going on? What are you doing?
Nothing.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We had a great show.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening.
No, what's going on? What are you doing?
If you go to GameInformer.com right now, you can read my full review of Sonic Frontiers.
We have been hearing about this game for half a year, sir? And
from me, yeah.
From you in particular. You are definitely leading the charge as the big Sonic fan. So, yeah. I mean, what succinctly, because people should go read your review for a much more in-depth thought on the game. But what can you tell us about the game?
So I scored it a 7.75 out of 10. Okay. I think it's a little rough around the edges. This is a new formula for the franchise. It's kind of open world-esque. They call it open zone because it's not quite like one giant open world. Instead, it is kind of like giant areas that are separated by loading screens, essentially. So you go to one area and it's kind of like a forest biome, and then you go to another one, it's a desert biome, and then so on and so forth. And they will, within these open zones, there's all kinds of playgrounds and obstacle courses that you can go through and kind of get collectibles and everything. And that's the big crux there of the progression is there are side stories. So you have to find these memory tokens from your friends that are trapped in this thing called cyberspace. And
I've heard of cyberspace.
Yeah, you surf the web, but they're trapped in cyberspace, which is like kind of like this alternate dimension of this island that they're on. And you have to retrieve these memory tokens, and each time you do that, you allow them to unlock like the next like area. So it's like, all right, well, you need like 7 more to unlock like the next cutscene or the next mission with this character. That's the side mission. The main mission is getting Chaos Emeralds, which I don't know how much of a Sonic fan you are.
I played enough Sonic to know what that Chaos Emeralds are. Big. So
yeah, you collect 7 of those, you turn into Super Sonic, right?
Yeah.
So each island, you want to collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds, and then there's a giant boss battle against these creatures called Titans. And when you're taking them on, you turn into Super Sonic, and it's just like the most bombastic, over-the-top boss battle you can think of. And like it's all set to like a vocal anime style like rock song.
Okay.
And it legitimately feels like it's ripped right out of like a Dragon Ball Z episode. It is just over the top and fun, but it is a little frustrating though, because like they will spam projectiles at you, and Super Sonic's invincible, but as he is Super Sonic, he slowly depletes rings. And if you reach 0 rings, you're no longer Super Sonic. And in his case, he dies because he's not going to be able to beat this Titan if he's not Super Sonic. So you have essentially
he's not good
limit.
Enough. He's normally not good enough unless he takes drugs.
Performance
enhancers.
Yeah, we'll call it that. So Sonic, you have a time limit in order to beat these Titans, and because all their moves are geared towards delaying your attack, that means that like it can get a little frustrating at times. But when I look back at Sonic Frontiers, I would say these Titan battles are among my most memorable moments in the game, because they are just so like epic in scale and over the top and just bonkers. Like, I can't believe this is currently happening in a video game, especially a Sonic the Hedgehog video game.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there are linear stages that you can find within the open worlds, and they're cyberspace stages. And these are themed after past Sonic worlds. Like, there's one that's like themed after Green Hill Zone. There's one that's themed after Chemical Plant Zone, and one that's themed after Sky Sanctuary from Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic and Knuckles. And then you can you play through those. Those are just traditional 3D Sonic action stages, right? And they're linear. They take usually not any longer than a couple of minutes. And based on how well you do in those, you get keys to unlock the next Chaos Emerald. Or you can go around, if you don't want to do those stages, you just want to stay in the open world, you can go and do that and find the keys out in the open world, but it's going to take you a lot longer. So I just recommend going and doing the linear stages. They're fun and pretty easy.
Okay.
But yeah, so I enjoyed my time with Sonic Frontiers overall. The open world design is a little lackluster at times, a little illogical at times. There's really bad pop-in, like when you're running through the world, like because Sonic is going so fast, it's kind of hard to like render so much stuff on screen, I would guess. But I was reviewing on PlayStation 5.
This was on PS5, yeah. Okay.
So I haven't played the Switch version yet. I am supposedly getting a copy of that ahead of launch, so that I can test that out and talk about it on my Nintendo podcast. That's my main concern, is how well is this going to run on Switch?
Yeah, because obviously, I mean, one would think that if anything is going to render it fast enough, it's going to be the PlayStation 5 with all of its, hey, no load times kind of thing, which obviously is a little bit of a fudge. But yeah, it's a little disheartening to hear that that's one of the issues, like that in particular, I think. So that's unfortunate. I hope it isn't that much of a holdback in the Switch version as well, because obviously that could differ greatly.
And that said, I think this is the best 3D Sonic game we've gotten in years, at least since Generations, which was 2011, maybe since Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. Okay. So which was 1999 and I think 2001 respectively. So
I didn't play the 3D Sonics. I've probably played like a couple minutes of it at like. Do you even know what the Wiz is?
The Wiz, no.
The Wiz. You ever watch Seinfeld?
A long time ago.
Way back, okay. Do you remember there was a character who's like, I'm the Wiz and nobody beats me? No. Well, anyway, for anyone who does, this was somebody that Elaine dated, I believe. The Wiz in the show is based on the fact that there is an actual tech store there was in the New York metropolitan area called the Wiz. Nobody beats the Wiz was their slogan, right? So I used to go there sometimes when I was a kid. And they would pick up like videotapes and things like that. Remember videotapes? Hey, videotapes, guys.
Never heard of them.
Millennials know, at least, and everyone older.
Only 90s kids will remember.
Hey, the ones who are younger, I mean, would my children, they know it because I've told them what it is, but they don't really know. But at any rate, you'd go to the store and sometimes they'd have the game on display. And I remember playing one of the 3D Sonics there, and I was like, this isn't for me. I really just like the 2D.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think that, when the 3D Sonic games are great, like the Sonic Unleashed Day stages and Sonic Generations had some really great 3D Sonic stages, and even Sonic Forces, for as much crap as that game rightfully gets, I think there are some really fun stages in that game. However, it's just the quality level has not been consistent, and that is the biggest problem with 3D Sonic games. I think Sonic Frontiers is as consistent quality as we've gotten in the franchise, 3D franchise anyway, as ever, maybe. And then I would say it's a contender for the best 3D Sonic game ever.
Okay. All right. Hey, can't ask for that much more than that, realistically.
Really?
Are they all going to be masterpieces? No. I mean, this sounds like at least it's positive, net positive.
And what it got me most excited for, because in talking to Takashi Iizuka, who is the head of Sonic Team, I was talking to him as part of our cover story that we did earlier this summer, and I was like, do you see this as kind of like the foundation of Sonic going forward? Like, is this kind of going to set the tone for like what Sonic is going to be like moving ahead? And he's like, yeah, I see this as kind of like laying the groundwork for the future of this franchise for the next like era of this series. So I would imagine that like the open zone concept is going to carry forward. That's what I'm most excited for, because they laid the groundwork pretty well here. It's an overall fun implementation of the open world concept. It's just a little rough around the edges, as most developers' first attempt at an open world game often is.
Sure.
If they can hone this down a little bit and make it just a little bit better designed, flow just a little bit better, they could really have something special on their hands in future iterations. And that's what I'm most excited for.
Okay. But obviously that was your big one. But I know that there's a lot more gaming stuff on your plate that we have to get into. So what do you want to go to next? What do you want to tell our listeners?
I mean, let's talk about the game you want to talk about, which is God of War Ragnarok.
Yes, please.
We can't talk too much because, one, I've only played about 4 hours so far. And two, I don't want to spoil anything for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I will say that it's nice because I know you recently played God of War 2018.
For the fourth time.
And you're very familiar with the story by this point.
Yes.
There is, for people like me and people who who've never played God of War 2018, there is a recap option before you, like in the main menu. So if you don't remember what the story is, you can click God of War recap and it will give you like a previously on, which is very helpful because this game jumps right into like the story.
Good. That's what I want.
I'm going to dance around any kind of spoiler talk. We can do this in the future. Maybe we can talk about the spoilers. However,
maybe in a little while when I get through it.
Yes. I mean, you're probably going to get through it before I do because I have another review game coming in this next week. So I'm going to have to put it aside.
Yes. Before I want to, no. Like if in a perfect world, I would take off this whole week from like my life. Like I would go on vacation from my
There's
family,
nothing going on in your job.
I would just go play it. Yeah, exactly. Right. But like, I mean, it's not just that. Like I got my kids and I got my wife and everything like that. Is, we got to get a new washing machine coming into the house too. And all these things. Right. So it's kind of a busy week for me and I would love to play it, but I can't, but I'm thrilled to play it. I'm living vicariously through you, as I told you.
And the last thing I'll say about it is I think that people who like God of War 2018 will continue liking God of War Ragnarok very much. I think that this game, if it continues to be as good as it has been in the first 4 or 5 hours, it will probably be my game of the year.
Let me also tell you this, though, is and you know this, but for our listeners in particular, when the reviews started to trickle in, the review scores, the actual written reviews and video reviews and everything like that, when I started to see the numbers coming in, I got just so happy. I was just like, yes, it actually is good. It's not just like I expect it to be good. It really is a good fantastic game. It's it's getting like anywhere from like 9 to all the way up to 10. Or equivalents from most of the outlets. I've seen some reviews that haven't necessarily been absolutely glowing. I think I saw one from an outlet that gave it out of a 6 out of 10, but that certainly feels like
that's
like
an outlier
outside the realm. Yeah, it's an outlier. I know I'm not going to feel that way. Like, I just really am not. I read a couple of reviews. I read the Game Before review, and there were a few other ones that kind of, they were all very respectful, kept things spoiler free, but also kind of gave me a sense of, okay, what am I walking into? And I really appreciate that. So I actually want to just highlight what a good job I think a lot of the reviewers were doing on this particular title. So kudos to the game journalist community that reviews games for people like me that are trying to figure out, hey, is this worth my money?
And I think this is absolutely worth your money. Like, to be honest, like, it's one of those games that's like, yes, this is a continuation. It's not like we're going to God of War 2018 again, where it's like, all right, we're changing everything up. Everything feels different than the predecessors. This is very much a sequel to 2018's God of War, and you're going to love it.
I wouldn't even want them to do that. Like, who says to themselves, like, hey, I really loved that game. Why don't we just mess with everything again? Like, you don't just say that every time. Like, I understand they changed up 2018 from, I want to say the previous one, God of War 3 had come, or
Ascension.
Well, let's say the previous mainline one.
Yeah.
Because yes, it is technically mainline, but it's also a prequel. The previous like sequential Kratos story, that was what, 2010, 2011. So it had been like 6-7 years since that one. I played Ascension 2. I actually liked Ascension. A lot of people don't like it, but like, it's fine. But this reinvention was great. I'm glad they're sticking with this, especially because it still takes place in the same world. There was like a hard restart for Kratos and for the franchise, and I think that made sense to keep things the same for this sequel. So I'm glad to hear it.
Yes, and I cannot wait to hear what you think once you get your hands on it, and I'm sure we'll talk about that as part of next week's show, at least a little
definitely,
bit,
in some form. And I can talk spoiler free for sure. So, yeah. but I mean, that's not the only thing. I mean, you've got some other fascinating stuff that actually meets our criteria of a fighting and gaming show pretty well.
Yeah. So you may recall that I was recently in Japan, and I was able to talk about like Super Nintendo World a little bit, and I was able to talk about some other parts of being in Japan.
We talked a lot about Super Nintendo World. But that was fun.
The main reason I actually went was because I was visiting Capcom's headquarters and getting my hands on and talking endlessly about Street Fighter 6. That's the next Game Informer cover story. Excellent. We revealed it today, and it is it's a game that I am extremely excited for. I've played the Street Fighter series since Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and I mean, that was when I had it on SNES, but I probably played the original Street Fighter 2, the World Warriors, on like at the arcade and everything. Because I remember that was one of my go-tos when I would like go to. What was your local arcade called?
Goodness, I don't know that I actually knew the name. I think I just kind of went there.
You just called it like the arcade or the game room.
It was the arcade at the mall, like that. Like we went to the strip mall and there was an arcade there. I don't know that I ever bothered to learn the name.
Okay, mine was called Fun Quarters.
Okay, I like that. Clever name.
Yeah, so I would
multi-level. I love that.
Yeah, it is. It's a clever play on the term quarters. Yes, but I loved Street Fighter growing up, and I remember like when we got the Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo cabinet in my arcade, and like Ken's throwing like flaming uppercuts and everything. That just blew my like, however old I was, probably like 8 years old, blew my mind, and. So I remember that I didn't play a whole lot of Street Fighter 3. Street Fighter 4 got me back into the series. Instead of playing Street Fighter 3, I played Street Fighter Alpha, which was kind of like it took place between Street Fighter 1 and Street Fighter 2, but it came out between Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 3. So it was like almost like the successor spin-off series to the Street Fighter series before 3 came out. But I played Street Fighter Alpha 3 just ad nauseum on my PlayStation 1. And I kind of skipped Street Fighter 3, and I look back at it now and I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have played this game more growing up, because it's absolutely gorgeous and it introduced so many core mechanics to the franchise going forward, namely parrying. And then Street Fighter 4 got me back into it when it came out on Xbox 360. And then Street Fighter 5 I reviewed for us. It had a really rough launch, but they turned that ship around.
It was a rough launch, but I liked the bones enough because I reviewed that for my outlet as well, and I think I only gave it a 2.5 because there was a lot of things. 2.5 out of 4. We had a weird
Oh, yeah,
four
that's weird.
stars. I didn't make it. Don't blame me. But
No, I mean, I gave it a 7.25 out of 10. So, like, it wasn't like something that I was thrilled about at launch either.
Honestly, it was a roughly equivalent. I probably would have given it, like, if I had the ability, I probably would have given it a 7 out of 10 or, 3 out of 5 stars or what have you. But I was stuck with my weird 4-star system. That's just how my outlet did it. But nonetheless, I remember liking the bones of the game enough that I was like, okay, at least there's a lot to like here. And I was hopeful for the future. And you're right. It turned around.
Yeah, and the two people who were in charge of writing that ship, Takayuki Nakayama and Shoei Matsumoto, they are in charge of Street Fighter 6. And they were the guys.
You're on point with your pronunciations. I really love that.
I do my best, man. Like, and they seem to get it in talking with them.
Yeah.
They understand like what the community needs. They fully acknowledge, like everybody at Capcom fully acknowledges that Street Fighter V's launch is something that they cannot have a repeat of.
Sure.
And there was, God, I forget his surname, but Tsuchiya was the name that I referred to him as, and he is the producer. He's one of the producers of Street Fighter 6, and he's been with Capcom, I think, over 30 years. And he was talking about like how this is a game that has made hardly any concessions. Like the team set out their vision, and then using his seniority and his experience, he advocated for this development team with the Capcom leadership and was like, hey, we can't have a repeat of Street Fighter V. And he's like, in all of my years of working on video games, I've always it's always like, all right, well, this concession has to be made, or there has to be compromise in this because of budget or because of time restraints. He's like, this is one of the very few, if not the only case that I can recall where there were just no compromises. This is just like 100% realizing the developer's vision. And he's like, that's just such a rare thing. And that's because Capcom leadership has allowed them to not have to rush out to market and be like, oh, well, we got to cut this mode because we got to release on this fiscal year or something like that. It's like they gave them all the time they need to create this game, and they've given them the means to do it as well. And like, from what I played and what I've seen behind the scenes, like they are really doing an amazing job, and I'm excited for this.
That's encouraging. I'm a big Street Fighter guy. I also have like kind of a blind spot for even Alpha. I kind of went away from fighting games for quite a while. I was playing different games. So from after all the various iterations of Street Fighter 2, I kind of didn't play. I played other genres, like I said, and I didn't come back until Street Fighter 4 like you. But I loved Street Fighter 4. I actually really did enjoy Street Fighter 5 as well. I think I'm hoping that they learn some real good lessons too. I don't know if they're going to do a story mode or not. I don't know if you know anything about that, but I liked the idea of the story mode. I didn't love their execution of it. I hope that they'll maybe revisit some of the ways they do it. This is just my hopes and dreams for the game. I don't know even what you know of that, but
so there's a world tour mode that is kind of like you create a character and then you kind of run around in this open area and you learn the story of these, like the overarching story, by interacting with the characters in the Street Fighter world. Like Luke, it's funny because the main character is this new character named Luke, and he was the final DLC character of Street Fighter V.
Okay.
And
yeah, I didn't get the last bundle of that.
You know what his he is an MMA fighter.
Is that right? Abel was from Street Fighter 4 was also an MMA guy.
Yeah, so I mean, well, it makes sense. They're all, Ryu and Ken wear MMA gloves.
Yes, they do.
So like it makes sense that like they would have an MMA fighter be like the main character here, but like your instructor, like your created characters, the instructor is Luke, and then like you interact with Ryu and all the other characters on Street Fighter 6, and that's one way you can learn the overall story, and then through arcade mode, just the same way as almost every other Street Fighter game to this point, you can experience the story of individual characters in the arcade mode. Like you beat the arcade mode as Ryu, you learn like the story through Ryu's eyes, basically.
Quick aside related to Street Fighter, because you keep bringing up Ken and Ryu and everything like that. I did send you the picture of my Ken Halloween costume, correct?
Did you? You remember you mentioned it to me. I don't think you sent it to me, did you?
I believe I sent it, sir. I could send it again, but I'm pretty sure I sent it. And I think because you don't remember, since I can send it to you again, I'm going to send it to you, and you're going to get a live reaction. You're going to rate my Ken costume. 1 to 5 on our typical 5-star scale.
I mean, it's not in
All
our
right.
text chat.
No, I believe it is because I just saved it from our text chat. You may not have gotten it for some reason because you know how those things go, but it is on its way over. Got the little green dots now, so we will see. And we can continue talking while we wait for this.
But it's interesting
to make its way through the wormhole.
It's interesting that we're talking about Ken because not only is Ken the character featured on the cover. Oh, I see it now.
You got it. Okay, let's
very good. I like it actually. Yeah? I like that a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say?
I've definitely never seen this picture.
Let's say 5 stars is like elite level cosplay from Comic-Con.
I mean,
then not what this is.
That's got to be like a 2.5 then. If we're saying 5 is elite level cosplay.
All right, fine. How about elite level Halloween?
I mean, then it's probably like a 4.
Okay. All right.
I mean, that's a good.
That's cool.
When I did Ryu,
yeah,
I did Ryu one year, and I mean, it was like kind of like alt costume Ryu. So I had like the blue gi instead of his white gi. So I had like the blue sleeveless gi. I did not put like the fake arms on. I just kind of like did me. But yeah,
okay.
like the hair looks great in that costume. Yeah, so
yeah, I bought they called it a yellow anime wig. So and that was $10. And honestly, without the wig, the costume is really terrible because like it's like, who are you? You're a random karate guy. But the rest of the costume, it's actually a Street Fighter 4 Ken costume.
Wow. Okay.
Because it has the logos on it and everything like that. I bought it on eBay. It was like $20. I honestly got a real good deal, I thought, on it.
That's not bad at all.
No, not at all. I was very pleased with it, but I got a lot of people at the party. A lot of people knew who I was when I went to the Halloween party and wore this, and then a lot of people when I was walking around knew too. But when I got something other than Ken, let's look at that picture and tell me if you don't think it's Ken, who am I?
I have no idea.
He-Man.
No.
The hair is not long enough. I'm wearing a shirt. He-Man doesn't wear a shirt.
I don't know.
I'm not criticizing you. I'm saying like other people. Like, what were you thinking? Come on, it's Ken.
But yeah, Ken is on the cover of Game Informer now.
Okay, sweet.
And he is one of the main characters of the Street Fighter 6 story, and he has a strange story. So talking to the Nakayama, the director, he was telling me that like Ken, like as the Street Fighter series has gone on, he's become more and more stable. And this is kind of related to like the way you hear about like MMA fighters as they make more and more money, or like boxers. It's hard to get up and run if you're sleeping on satin sheets or whatever the phrase is, right?
Sure.
And he was like, as he was getting more and more, like his life was getting stable, he started off as Ryu's rival in like the early Street Fighter games. And then he got married, he had a kid, and then like he became the vice president of the Masters Foundation. So he's getting pretty wealthy. And now he's on the run. Now there's some stuff happening in his life. Yeah, and he's like wearing different clothes to kind of just like not be as obvious that it's him. He's growing out, like he's looking a little bit scruffier these days.
Disheveled.
Yeah, and basically Nakayama was saying like, we were starting to feel like, he doesn't really have like reasons to fight. So we wanted to like kind of ignite that fire in his belly with a compelling story involving his life kind of getting shaken up, and now he needs to fight for survival.
Okay.
So
you could almost describe what he was before this as like victory has defeated him, right? Like,
yes.
I like that quote from Bane. I think it was Bane said it. Yeah,
it was Bane.
I'm sure it's been around in other places, but I always think of Bane.
Victory, and you know what? I will say, if you go read the Game Informer cover story, speaking of famous quotes, I do pull "You win or you learn."
Oh, there you go.
Although I do say there's a saying in fighting, and I say like, because like the first known attribution of that quote is it's a variation of a Nelson Mandela quote of like, I never lose. I either win or I lose, or I win or I learn.
Yeah.
And obviously it's been said
was
by
not John Kavanaugh originating this quote.
Correct. But I did say like, there's a saying in real life fighting, you win or you learn, based on a quote by Nelson Mandela. Sure. Because I was talking about how like, Street Fighter V at launch was not a runaway victory, but they learned a lot from that experience. And it seems like they're implementing that very well in Street Fighter 6. And by the way, there's 3 controls that you can do in Street Fighter 6. There's 3 different control schemes.
styles or setups.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's classic, modern. Modern is kind of like, you can still put the inputs in and everything, and there's a single button for special moves, so you don't have to put in like the full on inputs if you don't, but like it is kind of like a compromised version of that special move. Like you can't really strategically say, all right, I want this to be like a faster fireball. Okay. So you're not able to be as strategic. And then there's like a single button for throws. So it's more of like a simplified, streamlined control scheme. And then there's a third one, which you'll have to go to GameInformer.com to learn about, because that's an exclusive.
Ooh, interesting. I guess you guys should check that out.
I think that it might have particular interest to you, Scott.
Well, I'm going to read it anyway, so that sounds good.
But yeah,
but
so
I'm curious why that would be for me. Now I'm going to think about that and have a little bit of think on it.
Yeah, so that's that. And then my hands-on time with the game, I am so excited for this game. It feels great. It plays amazingly. It's absolutely gorgeous. They took like street art inspiration and like kind of like what they refer to as a hip hop aesthetic and applied that not only to the art style and like the character costumes, but also like the music influence is very much there as well. And they also took a lot of inspiration from real life MMA. Like there's actually walkouts now.
Interesting.
There's a cutscene, and it's cool because like the characters walk out together to the arena, and so they're kind of interacting with each other. Like there's one character, Jury, who is kind of like known for being.
She's great.
Yeah, she's known for being a little bit like, unstable, we'll say.
It's probably fair.
So she's like kind of walking and like taunting them, like kind of Joanna Jędrzejczyk style the whole way to the arena. And, if you're playing as Ryu's just like stoically like keeping his eyes forward, like looking at the arena and like kind of remaining focused on the battle. Whereas like other characters are like doing different things that play into their personality. It's a really cool, like they've done a lot of really neat things with this game. And I can't wait for it to come out, to be honest.
I'm thrilled. Is there a release window on that?
2023.
So sometime in the coming year is the release window.
Correct.
Got it.
It's not far off, hopefully.
I was going to say, can't wait until February 2024.
But then there was one more game that I did play, and then we can kind of start to wind down this episode.
Yeah. We're going to keep this a little bit short. We have so much to do, but unfortunately, we just time constraints in our lives. We're keeping it shorter. So what else were you playing? You found some stuff?
Remember NFL Blitz?
I sure did. I wrote a big piece for it at Den of Geek. Big history of it. You guys should go read that.
The fine folks over at Arcade 1-Up sent me the NFL Blitz Legend Arcade 1-Up cabinet to get some hands-on time with.
Nice.
So I built that in my spare time, which of which I have very little.
None, but yeah.
I spent a couple of evenings building that and getting it all set up on my Wi-Fi network because it is Wi-Fi enabled. So it comes with NFL Blitz 99. NFL Blitz, NFL Blitz 99, NFL Blitz 2000 Gold Edition, which are the 3 arcade games, right?
Yes.
And, it has 4-player on, like the deck itself has 4 joysticks, so you can play 4 players locally, or you can play online.
That's
NFL Blitz, all 3 games, and there's also leaderboards. So like
online.
I mean, my NBA Jam cabinet that I have also
that's online too. See, I'm out of the loop with a lot of the arcade 1-Ups. Like we bought my buddy for his bachelor party. It was kind of like part of the party / hey, you take it home. The Mortal Kombat one.
I have that one as well.
I was playing that actually as dressed as Ken. I'm playing him in Street Fighter in Mortal Kombat. I am not better than my friend. He is way better than me.
So it plays great. And it's interesting because like they got rid of a lot of like the late hits and everything because the NFL is a stickler for that.
Oh.
This is my one criticism of it is they got rid of that. It doesn't really affect core gameplay, right? Because like it's just like a fun little thing afterwards. However, they changed that because the NFL is like concerned about player safety and everything. And you know what? That's their prerogative if they want to be like that concerned about it. But like a pixelated Ray Lewis or a polygonal Ray Lewis tackling a polygonal Vinny Testaverde after the whistle is not going to hurt any player in real life.
No, and it's honestly not going to do much for the optics of it either, in my opinion, but whatever.
That's what they're doing. That is weird, though, is they address that retroactively, but they don't address the former name of the Washington Commanders retroactively.
Still in the Redskins, huh?
Well, the logo is there. I don't know if I think they all address the teams by the city name. I don't think there's any reference to the team names anywhere aside from the logos.
Yeah, I think they did always do cities in the, like, even in when you played NBA Jam.
But it's still like, all right, well, I understand if you want to like retroactively go back and like be like, hey, we're committed to like optics of player safety and everything. All right, cool. But what about this? You know, if you're going to make one change, shouldn't you kind of address both? That was the only weird thing. It's like
inconsistency is what you're talking about here. Yeah,
but other than that,
fair. I like that.
It's a tremendous package. The games play silky smooth like they did back in the day, and the online
period players, by the way,
a lot of them, yes. So like, and here's where they set up a multiplayer session for me. You know who I was playing against?
Let's say John Harbaugh.
No, Terrell Davis.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so I was on a Zoom call, and of course, he scored a touchdown on me, gave me the salute, so I got the salute.
TD scored a TD on you?
Yeah.
There you go.
Of course, he played as the Broncos. I told him I was going to.
As he would.
It's funny because, first up, we started the call, and it was, I was rocking an orange blazer. I'm like, I'm paying homage to your time as a Denver Bronco. And then as soon as the game started, I'm like, wait a sec, I got to do a wardrobe change. And I took off my blazer, threw on a Lamar Jackson jersey. I'm like, all right, now I'm ready to play.
Nice.
And he appreciated
good showmanship there. Oh yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, but yeah, so I mean, God, the online play again. It was pre-release servers, so it wasn't like there were a bunch of people playing. But I don't ever imagine that there's a ton of people on their servers in general at any given time.
Crazy, yeah.
At that same time, though, the gameplay online, almost no perceivable latency, no lag or like server stuttering at all. Excellent. And I'm on Wi-Fi. I'm not plugged in directly or anything like that because there's no Ethernet cable. It's only Wi-Fi, and I had a blast with it. I thought it's a great cabinet, and I'm excited. There's one more I have my eye on, and that is the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 cabinet that is coming out either later this year or early next year.
I yearn for the days where that will hopefully come one day where I actually have room to put an arcade 1-up cabinet in my house, because I don't yet. And it'll probably be too late to get it at this point, but I would love to get the Ninja Turtles cabinet. And I don't even think I need it. Like, I have the Cowabunga collection now. Like, I can play these games. Like, what do I want is always the trick that I have. I have to come up with. But it's not urgent because I can't get one anyway.
But I'm glad that I have a Street Fighter 2 cabinet, because that's fun. And also, we just talked about Street Fighter 6 a lot. By the way, to close out the Street Fighter 6 conversation,
and probably the show too. Yeah,
and probably the show. One thing that we did, we convinced them to leave the office with us. Nakayama and Matsumoto left the office with us on the second day that we were in the studio and go to a local arcade and just have them duke it out on the Street Fighter 2, 4, and 5 cabinets against each other. And we recorded that. And I believe next week you'll be able to go to GameInformer.com or YouTube.com/Game Informer and actually see the video of them playing against each other in like these, this just Taito Game Center in the middle of Osaka. And it was so much fun to watch them just kind of like pump a ton of yen into these cabinets.
That's a lot of fun. I meant to tell you, by the way, because I think we were talking recently about the fact that we both have Street Fighter 5. We could play that with each other. I did download Street Fighter 5 onto my console, so
I have it as well.
It's sitting right there, guy. We got to find some time. I don't know if it's gonna be this week. It ain't gonna be this week.
Yeah,
but soon.
I did go back and play a little bit of Street Fighter 5 after I finished my cover story, because I was like, I really had the itch because I enjoyed my time with Street Fighter 6 so much. Imagine if you went and you played God of War Ragnarok for like maybe 3 hours. Like, that's how much time I got with Street Fighter 6, right? I played about 3 hours.
I would just be plotting to break into Sony Santa Monica.
You probably would have left that preview event, written your thing, and then be like, all right, I have the itch to go play God of War. So you'd go play God of War 2018. Sure. And that's kind of what I'm doing with Street Fighter 5 right now. Is I played Street Fighter 6 for about 3 hours. I have the itch to play Street Fighter, and now I'm getting back into Street Fighter 5 in preparation for 6 to come out next year.
Of course. But you know what? I think we fit a lot into a little bit of time.
This was jam-packed.
Jam-packed. But this is our show for the week. And if you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is you're listening. And while you're at it, would you kindly subscribe to our social handles at Brian P. Shea and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And tell a damn friend.
Tell everybody. Tell your mom. Tell everybody. We got to welcome more to the fold.
And of course, you can always reach us with questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear about, or just letting us know what you're hyped for at groundandpwnedpod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games. We will talk to you next week.